In this short demo, we are going to build a live alarm table in PyVision using Alarm Table Plus. Alarm Table Plus lets you take normal AF attributes or calculations and turn them into an operator-facing alarm list. The table can show the active alarm, the asset, the value, the severity, a custom message, acknowledgement status, and optional sound alerts. We will focus on current mode, which means the table only shows alarms that are active right now. First, I create the symbol the normal PyVision way. I drag an attribute onto the display and choose Alarm Table Plus as the symbol type. That initial attribute gives the symbol its starting data source. After the symbol is created, the next step is to configure it as an asset relative symbol. I right-click the symbol, open the PyVision search criteria options, and define the asset search criteria for the equipment I want this table to monitor. Once the search criteria are configured, PyVision automatically populates the matching assets, and Alarm Table Plus can evaluate the selected attributes across that asset set. Now I open the Alarm Table Plus configuration pane and choose the attributes I want to use. In this example, I am monitoring process values such as pressure, temperature, and equipment state. The first important choice is how each attribute should be used. Alarm Table Plus supports different source types. If an attribute should create alarm rows, I set it to alarm. If an attribute should only be displayed as extra context in the table, I set it to data. And if an attribute should be used as a dynamic threshold, I set it to limit. This distinction is important. Alarm attributes decide whether a row appears in the table. Data attributes help operators understand the situation, but they do not create alarms by themselves. Limit attributes are used behind the scenes as thresholds for dynamic conditions. For the main process value, I select alarm. Now I can define the conditions that create alarm rows. I click Add Condition and choose the operator. For a high alarm, I might use greater than. For a low alarm, I might use less than. For equipment state or digital values, I can use equals or not equals. Next, I choose the value to compare against. If the threshold is the same for every asset, I use a static value. For example, temperature greater than 80. If each asset has its own limit stored in AF, I use a dynamic value and select one of the attributes marked as a limit. Now I add the message operators should see. Instead of a generic condition, I can write something clear, like high discharge pressure or pump not running. This makes the alarm row easier to understand during operation. Then I assign a severity. Severity helps users prioritize the table. Critical and major should be reserved for alarms that need immediate attention, while warning or information can be used for lower priority abnormal conditions. For noisy numeric values, I can also enable Deadband. Deadband prevents the row from flickering on and off when the value is hovering around the limit. For example, if a high alarm starts above 100 and the deadband is 5%, the alarm will not clear until the value drops below 95. Now I switch to the data source type for supporting attributes. These values will appear as extra columns in the alarm table. For example, if pressure is the alarm, I might also show flow, mode, product, or speed so the operator has context without opening another display. Next, I make sure the table is in current mode. Current mode is best for live monitoring because the table only shows active alarms. When the process returns to normal, the alarm row is removed automatically. With the alarm logic configured, I can adjust the table layout. I can show or hide columns, rename column headers, enable filters, and group rows by fields such as asset, severity, or acknowledgement state. For a control room display, grouping by severity or asset is often the fastest way to organize active alarms. Alarm Table Plus also includes a summary bar. When enabled, the summary bar shows the total number of active alarms, counts by severity, and acknowledgement status. This gives operators a quick overview before they even scan the rows. Now let us enable acknowledgement. Acknowledgement lets the operator mark an alarm as seen. I can decide which severities require acknowledgement. For example, I may require acknowledgement for major and critical alarms, while lower priority rows can be marked as not required. When acknowledgement is enabled, the table shows an acknowledgement button on rows that need action. The operator can acknowledge a single row or use the header menu to acknowledge all currently visible rows after filtering. I can also highlight rows based on acknowledgement state. Unacknowledged rows can use a stronger color, while acknowledged rows can use a quieter color. This makes it easy to see what still needs attention. Finally, I enable sound. Sound is useful on a live operator display where important alarms should be noticed immediately. I choose one of the built-in sound files and set the severity threshold for when sound should play. Sound only plays for unacknowledged alarms that meet the selected severity level. Once the alarm is acknowledged, the sound stops, as long as there are no other sound-eligible alarms still active. At this point, the display is ready. As live values update, Alarm Table Plus evaluates the configured conditions, creates rows for active alarms, shows supporting context data, highlights severity and acknowledgement state, and optionally plays sound for the highest priority issues. The result is a focused, configurable alarm table built directly inside PiVision, without requiring a separate alarm display or custom code for each monitored condition.